thanks for doing this. I guess Chris Bell has been talking about you for quite a while, and I've been aware of your progress I'm thinking for a year or so.
Yeah.
And you've got a very inspiring story, so I think it's great to get you to share that. Are you? My assumption is you must be located somewhere in Northern California. Is that correct?
Yes, I live in Sacramento, California.
Okay, that makes sense with Chris and Mark being up there because you're in New York. I see you training over at Super Training from time to time. So I guess I communicate. And are you a chef by trade or something?
No, I manage a warehouse receiving department. But I love to cook, and when I was going meat based, I just wanted something to stand out to people because I had a amazing transformation. And I knew if I threw in like the chef name, more people were going to see the recipes I'm throwing out there that were pretty simple. And that's how the name came up.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I know we have another fellow, his name's Terry, that goes by something similar, I think, Carnivore chef or something like that. So anyway, well, let's start. I mean, because, you were up, well, I guess over 400 pounds at some point.
Correct.
I was pretty proud of the fact I got over 300 at one point, but 4 bills that's more of a challenge. So
yeah.
No, obviously that's not where you wanted to be. So talk to me about how you ended up at 400 pounds. I mean, what was the deal? I mean, you didn't wake up one day and go from 180 to 400. I mean, that's a process.
Right. So all my life I was kind of the chubby kid, pretty heavy. I was very quiet in school, kept to myself, and a lot of times when I would come home, my parents would be at work a lot of the times, and so I would be digging in the fridge, kind of finding just something to eat. And with not being very active, sitting in front of the TV a lot, I started experimenting more with foods inside the fridge, and that's where my weight gain started happening. And now, throughout my whole life, I thought that's where I was going to be, just this chubby fat kid. I've tried dieting, and I yo-yo dieted a lot. I didn't know how to actually diet. You see all these fad diets all around, and a lot of them do work if you stay consistent to them, but they have to be realistic. I can't feel like I'm on a diet for the rest of my life. I can't go to somebody else's house and say, I can't eat that because I'm on a diet. I have to eat this. It has to be something realistic to where it fits into a lifestyle change. So I never really knew how to diet. I always had an excuse why I couldn't stick to it, and I fell off somehow, and I ended up gaining more weight than originally what I started off with. My ex-wife at the time, she noticed I wasn't feeling very well. I was waking up, like, no kidding, man, about like 4 or 5 times a night. Within like an hour, I would have to urinate so bad. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I'd wake up, my bed sheets are soaked just in sweat. I knew I was getting unhealthy, but I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And a lot of times we drag our feet when it's something for us. I didn't have a doctor to go to because I haven't been going to a checkup or anything like that. So she had secretly found me a doctor, did my new patient paperwork without me knowing, and she came home one day and said, "Hey, you got a doctor's appointment Monday morning." At that point, I couldn't say no. The last time I weighed myself was 405 pounds. When you get to 400 pounds, you kind of give up on the scale. You're like, I'm not getting on anymore. At that point, I'm not trying to prove anything. I need to fix my health. So I went in, I did the blood work. Initially, that's what happens. You do your blood work, and then you come back, and that's when the wake-up call kind of happens. This doctor was telling me everything was basically wrong with me at the time, and it was such a big wake-up call that, I knew I was unhealthy, but I didn't know I was basically dying at this point. I knew about diabetes, but I didn't know too much about it. When he tested my sugar level, it was at 500. He was shocked, and like beyond shocked. And I'm like, okay, it's at 500. You know, I don't know. I didn't know what that meant. And he put it in reality that when you are at that range, you should be in a diabetic coma. Man, at that point I was spacing out. He was telling me, and all I thought about is, man, I'm not going to see my daughter go into the first grade. You know, he's prescribing me all this medication that, you know, as a doctor, that's what you normally do. Is somebody walks in that unhealthy, you want to get them back on track. He's prescribing me all this medication that, you know, I need to go get after disappointment to start getting back on track. So I went out and sat in my car almost for an hour, just thinking like, man, what did I do to myself? You know, I knew there was a supplement shop nearby. I just didn't want to be on prescription medication for the rest of my life. That wasn't going to be the answer for me. But then again, my health was going the wrong way, so it might have been the answer for me. But I wanted to give it a shot myself without taking medication. At this point, I was already in the hole. I mean, it couldn't get any worse. So I went to this supplement shop. I walked in, and of course, this guy's jacked, man, you know, like sculpted. And I told him, I said, look, I'm not looking for any supplements. I just want to know what you're eating to get healthy, because you're doing something right. You know, I told him I can't eat salads for the rest of my life. I got to make it work with my family as well. So basically, he described the bodybuilding diet. And I'm sure you know what that's like. You eat about 6 meals a day. Everything's like weighed out. And man, you know, for somebody that's never really actually dieted, that was like the most confusing thing in the world for me. But hey, man, I gave it a shot. I was desperate. So I went and bought a scale. I bought everything on the grocery list he told me. And I even did it wrong. I weighed my food out wrong. But, you know, I was willing to give anything a shot. I was sitting at home one day. I was so lost, man. I'm like, man, is this it? Am I going to have to get these prescriptions? Am I going to have to weigh my food all the time? I can't even go out to dinner with my family without thinking like, hey, does this weigh a certain amount? Can I even have it? I happened to come across the documentary Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And, you know, Chris Bell made that movie. You know, I was a big wrestling fan, and the Hulkamania cover caught my eye. When you ask me, you know, what do you have in common with Chris Bell and Mark Bell? You know, at the time it would have been nothing. You know, I'm no power lifter. I'm no bodybuilder. What locked me into that movie is something that he said about Mark Bell, that, you know, he had trouble in school when he was growing up. And I was also in some of the special classes growing up, because, you know, I wasn't up to par with everybody's reading level and you know, functional skills. So that really locked me in. I'm like, man, this guy has kind of the same story as me, but he's lifting the world basically. You know, look how strong he is. So I looked these guys up, man, on Instagram and YouTube, and I'm like, all these guys are doing is throwing away the bread and just eating meat, and they're shredded, and look how strong they are. So, you know, I was telling my family, look, I'm going to try to do this red meat diet and just basically eat red meat. Now, when you tell somebody that, they're like, you're already digging yourself a hole, and you're not going to take prescriptions that a doctor assigned to you, and now you're telling me you're going to eat red meat. It freaks people out when they hear the word red meat. That's what you're going to eat. So I said, I'm going to give it a shot, just see what happens. Kid you not, man, the first month, the weight started flying off me. You know, and I'm like, man, maybe I'm onto something. But at the time, I'm still going for checkups at the doctors as well. And he's thinking I'm taking these prescriptions. And I didn't. So the whole year, I just focused on my diet. I didn't even go to the gym or anything like that. All I did was just, you know, zone in on my diet. And this red meat stuff was working for me. In a 1 year time frame, I lost 191 pounds, just diet alone. You know, and now I'm going back to my doctors for my yearly checkup, and he has me do my blood test and all that. And he was blown away. He goes, something might not be accurate here, because everything looks normal. So he had me do it again. And I went back 2 weeks later for another checkup. You know, maybe there was something wrong with and he was blown away. You know, and I basically told the doctor, I said, look, I know you prescribed me all these. I gave him actually the envelope with all the handwritten prescriptions he would give me. And I said, look, I didn't even turn in one of these. All I did was change my diet to red meat. And initially, when you tell a doctor that as well, he has some reserves on it because, you know, they're mostly want to take you either to a plant-based diet or some type of low-carb diet, right? And for me, that's what actually worked is red meat. But with my story, I always want to make sure I tell people is, I'm not saying don't take the prescriptions. That's just the risk I took, and it actually worked out for me.
Yeah, Hadi, I mean, because when you first described, you know, you started talking about the you know, the need to urinate, wake up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You're clearly describing, this. I mean, it's a symptom that's often, you know, nocturia, and it's what happens when your blood glucose reaches a certain threshold, and it's debatable what it is. Some people say it's 160. You start to have to urinate more frequently, and you get this situation. When you get over 500, I mean, you're in this situation where diabetic ketoacidosis is certainly a possibility, and that people can die from that. It's got it's a not insignificant mortality rate. There's people that die with blood glucose that's 500, and many diabetics do present with these super high blood glucoses. So you came, and I assume you're still like 400 pounds when this was going on. And
yes.
Clearly, I mean, at 400 pounds, you had to know I'm not the healthiest person on the planet.
Right.
I mean, that's not a surprise for you. So, I mean, you know, and you got this huge wake up call, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the doctor is going to freak out. He's going to say, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know if he suggested insulin, but I'm sure he probably said, let's get you on a bunch of metformin, maybe put you on some these other things and stuff. And so they're trying to, let's get this blood glucose down as fast as possible at all costs. And I think that's a very reasonable situation. But we also know that when we go to a low carb diet, and particularly a carnivore diet, I mean, the blood glucose often plummets pretty quickly. And you probably within a few weeks, you probably noticed a tremendous improvement in some of your symptoms. Your blood glucose probably was no longer 500. It might have been 200 or something like that. And then better and better and better. And so, and losing 191 pounds in a year is phenomenal. I mean, that's got to feel wonderful. And, you know, it's you know, sticking to it. Now, did you have, I mean, obviously, you know, you're trying to bodybuilding. Let me ask you more about the bodybuilding diet, because, you know, that's typically lean meat and some sort of, you know, fiber-rich vegetables. Typically, that's typically what you do. So when you were doing that, did you get any results at all? I mean, what was the struggle? Was it hunger? Was it just confusion? What made that so hard for you?
For me, it made me feel like I was on a schedule. Like I had to eat every 2.5 hours to 3 hours. Like I have to stop what I'm doing right now because it's for my next meal. So all I kept thinking about is, okay, I gotta eat at this time. I gotta eat at this time. You know what I mean? And realistically, it just didn't make sense to me. Like, you know, I kept thinking to myself, I'm no bodybuilder. Like, why am I trying to eat every 2 hours? You know, but I started seeing a little bit of results at first. You know, with anything you change your diet, you're gonna eat lower amount of calories. Of course, you're gonna start seeing the results right away. You know, but it was not sustainable for me. For me, I couldn't actually live my life where, you know, let's say I want to take my family out on a weekend just for dinner or something. In my mind, I kept thinking, okay, does this weigh a certain amount, you know, for my next meal? Is it close enough to my next meal? It just, you know, it was throwing me off. And I just wasn't really getting focused in on it. I kept thinking, you know, this isn't going to work for me. This isn't going to work for me. When I saw what, you know, Mark and Chris were eating, man, it was the most simple thing in the world. You know, all I'm doing is cooking ground beef. All I'm doing is putting something inside the crock pot. It was just so simple. You know, I could eat as much as I want of it, you know, obviously not overeat, but, you know, I didn't have to stick to a time clock and say, I got to eat at this time. I started really listening to my body and saying, well, now I'm hungry. Now this is the time to eat. I wasn't waking up every morning and saying, I have to have breakfast. I mean, we're so programmed to wake up, we have to eat right away because breakfast is the most important meal of the day. What I found out is, you know, my breakfast time is really around 11 or 12 o'clock. That's when my body's really hungry. But yeah, that's one of the things is listening to my body. That's when I found out, what the correct times for me to eat was, not what I was programmed to think I was supposed to eat at that time.
Hadi, how much, just for frame of reference, how much, when you switched over to this red meat-based diet, a more carnivorous diet, how much were you eating a day? I mean, what was your eating like? What were you eating?
So before before I was doing any of the diets, right? I was basically a closet eater. So, seeing me that big, I would be eating stuff, but I was so almost ashamed to eat in front of people that, when everybody's asleep at night, I would just raid the pantries, man. Anything I could get my hands on, I would eat. And then when I switched over to the bodybuilding diet, well, for example, let's just say I went to a drive-through, right? I would get 2 meals, 2 large meals, in fact, the largest they had, but I would switch. One soda will be like a Sprite and one would be like a Coke. I didn't ever want the person to think like, hey man, those 2 meals are for this guy. Not that, that's what they're thinking, but in your mind, you're like, man, I don't want this person thinking those 2 meals are for me. So I would be eating 2 large meals in one sitting, basically, if I went to a drive-through. But then when I switched to the bodybuilding diet, I was eating 6 meals a day, like a 4-ounce chicken with a half a cup of rice and, half a cup of green veggies, basically, around 6 times a day. And now when I went to this carnivore diet, I'm realistically eating 2 pretty good sized meals a day. About my meat portions are about 8 to 10 ounces, honestly. And if I have eggs with it, I have about three eggs. And those are consistently my meals, about twice a day.
Okay, so I mean, you're not eating a ton of food, and
Right.
What is your satiety level like? Do you feel like I'm getting enough food? Are you hungry on that?
See, that's the thing is I'm never hungry. I'm never hungry. My body just knows, okay, around this time I'm going to eat this meal. And then when I get home from training, I'm eating this meal. And I have so much energy throughout the whole day. I feel like I have more energy now than I've ever had in my life. Even when I was on the bodybuilding diet, I was eating every 2.5 hours. I was even eating carbs at the time, where everybody tells me, you need carbs to really have energy. I got more energy now taking away the carbs and adding in some fats in my diet than I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, so the meats you're having, does it tend to be like the more fattier cuts, the ribeyes, the skirt steaks, the short ribs? Is that what you kind of focus on?
Kind of, and I do a lot of chuck roast as well. And if I get a very lean cut of meat, I just throw on a little bit of butter if I feel like I need it. But I do actually a lot of chuck roast. Those are the best deals for me, and I just usually grab them and have them in my freezer or my fridge.
Somebody was asking about what is your blood glucose these days? I mean, did you have a hemoglobin A1C checked when you first started, when you first were diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, and then have you had it checked recently, or what kind of blood sugars are you looking at currently?
The last time I checked my blood sugar, it was about 100 and something. But I had, with the coronavirus and everything going on, I have not actually went back to and had one updated, and I would love to do that as of now. Just because of everything that's going on, I just want to get another scan, but I just have not been able to actually go in and get one of those done yet.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly, if you're really interested, just a little blood glucose monitor from Walgreens, or CVS,
Sure.
you can go up for $20, and you could certainly check that if you're interested. But certainly 100 is obviously, compared to 500, is a tremendous improvement. This is all without any medication whatsoever, correct?
Right. No medication.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And then you've lost this weight. So then you said you went a year before you did any exercise. And so for
Correct.
people, you have to exercise. That's clearly not necessary for many people. Now I saw like a few months back, you did I guess it was a powerlifting competition where you deadlifted your former body weight, which is over 400 pounds, which is
right.
That's a pretty solid deadlift for anybody. So tell me about the transition into strength training. How did that go about? I'm sure Chris and Mark had something to do with that, but
Oh,
talk about
absolutely.
your journey on that.
So, you know, at the time when I was going through my transformation, I learned my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. You know, he was going through a bunch of treatments at the time. But, you know, when somebody's going through chemo and radiation, they have no energy whatsoever. They're just, you know, basically laying there. Man, I you know, I knew my dad was eventually going away, but I wanted just him to have just a little energy, just a little wake up. But I've seen all Chris's documentaries, and I knew they sell a product called Mind Bullet that has kratom in it, and you know, they use it as a pre-workout, as energy as well. Man, I was laying on my couch one night, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to email Chris Bell, you know, and just kind of ask him about this product. Sometimes when you send an email out to somebody that has that many followers, you're like, man, this guy doesn't have time to, you know, look at my email. Man, I kid you not, within like 5 minutes, he responded back. I ran into the room to show my ex-wife at the time. I was like, Chris Bell just emailed me. I was so excited, you know what I mean? So I was just telling him the situation, and he goes, hey, come down to the gym tomorrow, and I'll give you some samples. At this point, I'm blown away. I'm like, man, these guys have followed for so long, and now he's telling me to come down to the gym. He wants to give me samples. So I head down there, and then I became selfish at the time. And of course, I have to tell this guy, you changed my life just watching, you know, your documentary and what led me to you. So I show him my transition, and he's blown away, you know, that I did this on my own. So he invited me down to the gym to start, you know, kind of training in there and seeing if I liked it. At first, I didn't know anything about training. I would go to a 24-hour fitness, sit on the curl machine, kind of just, you know, curl, just what I thought I needed to do. Walking into a powerlifting gym is a new world, man, especially for somebody like myself. I've never done anything like this in my life. So I started training with these guys, and, you know, at first I didn't know anything, and I'm still learning form and all that. And Chris kind of mentioned to me, he said, hey, you know, at first what happened was he wanted to see how strong I was getting. So he threw on 405 on the trap bar. And I picked that up the very first time. I didn't even know I could do that on the trap bar. And he was blown away. And he said, hey, you know, if you want, we can get you inside of one of these competitions, these local ones, and, you know, you just have fun. Now I'm thinking to myself, man, I could never do something like that. Thanksgiving was coming up, and the gym manager, Smokey, invited me. He said, hey, if you want to train, you're welcome to train that day. So I came in. While I was stretching, he said, hey, did you ever think about signing up for a competition? I said, yeah, Chris mentioned it, but I never really thought about doing that. I said, I can't really do something like that. You know, I've never really dialed in my form. And he said, well, we're signing you up. And I thought he was kidding at first. Next day I come in, he wasn't kidding. He called me into his office. He signed me up, and I'm going home that day. I called my girlfriend, and I said, hey, I guess I am doing this powerlifting competition. Man, there is so much that goes into preparing for something like that. Not just physically, but mentally. You know, a couple weeks before this competition, I failed that 405 lift. And you know, going into this competition, I told the guy that was handling all my weight for me, I said, hey, whatever numbers you pick, I don't want to know. I just want to go out there and lift. So my last lift of the night, they threw on 405 on the 403, I'm sorry, on the deadlift bar, and that thing just went up. You know, now that I got back into training, just on Tuesday, I deadlifted 465 for the very first time trying it. So a lot of it is just mental. As long as I don't know what's on the bar, I just want to go out there and do work.
Yeah, that'd be nice. You know, maybe you get that 500-pound barrier. That's a pretty thing that not many people, you know,
right,
in the general population can do. And so when you were, you said you grew up kind of the chubby kid, and then you became a very, very definitely chubby adult. Was there any
right.
point in your life where you thought, I'm going to be an athlete, I'm going to compete in sports? Were you just resigned to that? And then, I mean, how did you get your mind around changing who you are?
You know, growing up, it's just, I thought that was my identity, this chubby kid. In high school, I wanted to play football, so I did. You know, that was like the best sport for me, playing football. I played line, and you know, I was a little quick with running for a guy my size, so they had a couple of special plays for me where I, you know, run the ball for a few extra yards. But I never, outside of that, after high school, thought I would ever be an athlete. I just thought, okay, I could do football just because I could block on the line and, you know, get the extra yards. I never got my mind around, hey, I could be a different person than this fat guy growing up. And I just was so consumed in that identity. I thought that's who I was going to be, that I pushed away anything that could have been positive in my life at first, because I said, no, I can't do it. This is who I am.
When you were growing up, I mean, did your parents struggle with obesity? Was that something that was part of the household? What kind of food were you guys eating as kids? And then I guess the other question I would have is, you know, when you transitioned to this red meat diet, you know, and I think your family, were they like, this guy's nuts? And when,
Yes.
and when did they sort of say, wait a minute, maybe it isn't so crazy?
So, you know, first of all, I'm Middle Eastern. So everything we eat has carbs, like rice, potatoes, and pita bread on top of it. So you're basically eating carb on top of carb on top of carb, and some meat somewhere in that dish. So growing up, you know, my parents would, my dad was on the heavier weight side. Nothing like, you know, 400 pounds, but he was pretty heavy when I was growing up. Everything would be just in the fridge, you know, because my parents worked all the time. So when I come home, I'm basically just heating up my own food or experimenting with something and making my own concoction of food. And a lot of it just more carbs on top of carbs, you know. Now, when I told my family, hey, I'm going to give this red meat a chance where I just don't eat nothing but red meat, they freaked out at the time. They said, you're crazy because you're basically dying, and now you're refusing to take the medication the doctor's giving you, and now you're just going to eat red meat. And, you know, a couple months after that, I started eating the red meat, like just about like 2 months of eating solid red meat, and they saw the weight flying off of me and how much energy I started gaining. It kind of started, you know, changing their minds a little bit, like, hey, maybe this guy's onto something. And that's what it took. Is, you know, I think a lot of times when I describe it to people, they're like, no way. But, you know, with my family seeing me all the time and seeing that transition, it started changing their mindset about how red meat's actually better for you, or how it, you know, worked better for me.
What was the doctor's response, or was there any, or did you mention it to him when he saw that your weight flew off, you lost so much weight, your blood glucose dropped dramatically, your labs are so much improved? And you did you tell him you're eating an all red meat diet? And what was his response?
Yes. When I told him I switched to just red meat, you know, at the end of the doctor meet after that 1 year where I gave him the prescriptions back and all that, I told him all I did was change my diet and all I'm eating is red meat. And he said, what do you mean you're just eating red meat? I said, I just eat, you know, ground beef, you know, pot roast, and that's all I've been eating. And he was blown away by that, you know, that I was able to, you know, drop all that weight. You know, my cholesterol level wasn't skyrocketing through because initially that's what they think. You're on a higher fat diet, your cholesterol is going to go crazy. But he said, everything looks normal. He said, normally, you know, I would tell people about changing their diet, you know, going plant-based or a low-carb diet. He says, but I can't really argue with you on that because everything looks normal if that's what you're doing. So it kind of, you know, opened up his eyes to something different than, you know, I'm not saying that's what I recommend for, that's what worked for me. And, you know, the doctor was able to see my results at that time.
Yeah, I mean, at least they're open-minded, and it's good you do that because the more physicians that are exposed to this, the more open-minded they're going to be, and some will actually prescribe it for their patients and to their benefit. So that's good that you do that. So now you've been on, you know, I know you have some social media sort of, you know, things that you do. Has that
Sure.
been just a positive experience for you? I mean, most people are supportive when people do make these huge dramatic changes. What's been, I mean, but even again, we have this small subset of people that get online and they complain and say, "How dare you eat meat? You're killing
Yeah.
animals." Have you been? What's been the overall response to this, online for you?
For me, online it's an amazing community that's been built around the keto and carnivore community, man. There's so much support in that, and just seeing everybody's post, and a lot of the transition photos of just eating at a higher fat diet with more red meat, their transition, it's so positive and motivating. I do get the every now and then somebody will pop in and throw that comment out there, how dare you eat this red meat, it's breathing is what. I don't feed into that negativity, you know what I mean. It's not like I went and found them, they found me to try to bring me down, but it's just there's such a great community around that carnivore and keto community that there's so much positive things, man. I feel like I built another family that I've never actually met in real life that support me, and I support them, and they live all over the world.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is a
Yeah.
great community, and I think the end goal is everybody just trying to support each other, get healthy. Outside of lowering your blood sugar and then obviously dropping all the weight, were there any other benefits that you saw? I mean, it was like joint pain, mental health, mood, any other things that improved for you?
Yes. So mental health, beyond different right now, to be honest with you, and joint pain. So, man, I've been big my whole life. In all reality, what a lot of people don't know is when I go to bed at night, when I used to go to bed at night weighing 400 pounds and I wanted to get up, I can't just get up. It took me literally about 30 minutes to because I would have to elevate my legs every night. They're so swollen, my ankles. And I would have to take one leg at a time, like literally pick one leg at a time and shift it over, where I would sit at the edge of the bed just trying to get feeling back into it. It would take me about a half hour just to start actually taking baby steps to get up, My knees used to ache all the time, man, carrying that weight around, trying to run around, just, be a part of life, man. And it takes so much wear and tear on your body carrying that weight around. Now I just jump out of bed, I'm able to do so much physical activity that I never thought I would even do in my whole life.
Somebody was asking, Hadi, did you incorporate any fasting into the diet? Is there like intermittent fasting? You do 28, 48-hour fast? Any of that occur to you?
So I did try a few long fasts. I've tried about 4 days worth at times, and I think that works great, but it's not consistent for me with powerlifting. I don't have as much energy when I'm fasting that long. What I normally do is I cut off my mealtime, around 6 or 7 at night, and I don't eat until the next day, around 11 or 12 in the afternoon, and I just try to kind of fast it like that. That's the only thing that's actually worked for me. These long fasts, if I wasn't powerlifting, yeah, I would have reached the results probably a lot faster. But I just can't fast and, go into the gym and try to destroy a giant workout like that. I have to have some type of meal inside my body.
Yeah. Let me ask you, now that are you basically at your goal weight now? I mean, and what do you weigh right now? What was your peak weight and what do you weigh right now?
So I weigh 214 pounds right now. The lowest I've ever gotten was close to 183, 184-ish. When you go into a gym for powerlifting and you're like, man, I can't pick up heavy weights being this little. Mentally, I wanted to put on some weight, but I needed to put it on the right way. So for myself, when I wanted to gain the weight, I wanted to hit something over 200, but I obviously didn't want to gain all my weight back either. I had to do it the right way to where it doesn't just all go to my stomach. This weight gain to get up to 214, actually I was 230, and I leaned back out to 214. This is the correct weight for me right now, where I feel comfortable and strong, and you know, where I don't feel big or bloated at the whole time. But I just had to figure out the correct portions for me, what I needed to sustain me throughout the whole day, and to get me through my workouts, and just, you know, live a regular life as well, to where it didn't feel like I'm cutting all the time or I'm trying to gain all the time. This weight right here is the best weight I've ever felt good at.
What do you know, there's a lot of people that ask about, carnivore diet. Yeah, it's great for losing weight. And then when you want to put on muscle and size, did you find you had to add carbohydrates back into your diet, or how did you manage to do that?
So that's the best question right there. Is so many people told me, hey, how can you sustain a powerlifting if you're not adding in carbs? Are you ever you think you'll ever gain any muscle off of it? In all reality, this is the strongest I've ever been in my life, and I'm not even touching one single carb. Even going into this powerlifting meet, a lot of people kept asking me, hey, are you going to carb up before this meet? Or why would I carb up? I didn't use any carbs to get this strong going into the meet, you know? And just right now, this week, I deadlifted 465, and I still haven't had one carb in my system. So I am getting stronger eating just red meats. I'm not incorporating not one single carb into my diet at all, and everything seems to be working well for me. You know, I think we all just have learned for so long that, hey, you have to carb up before you go into something big like that, a big lift. In all reality, if you're not using it all the time, why would you bring it back into the diet if something's already working?
Yeah, no, I certainly understand that philosophy, and I've been able to perform very well as a
Yeah, I
athlete
agree.
without the carbs as well. And so I think it's something that, I think it's, maybe not necessary. I would say, and for many cases, it's not necessary. Has your diet impacted your family diet? I can't remember if you have children or anything like that. I think you do.
So
What impact has it had on the whole family?
So this diet has honestly changed my life for the better. You know, before, being so heavy, I had only a daughter, and changing my whole life, I felt like I gained a new life, man. I was blessed with a little boy that's 1 year old right now as well. So, yes, this has impacted my family for the better, where, I asked my daughter, hey, what do you want to eat for dinner? And she's like, hey, can we have some steak tonight? Or can we have some pot roast? Man, that makes me the happiest hearing that. She's still a kid, and of course she still has her snacks here and there, but majority of her, what I want to eat for dinner, if it's that, then I know I won a little bit right there. My son, he loves eating any red meat that you throw on the plate, and he still won. So whatever I give him, he's going to eat. But he loves eating, little pieces of steak, burger, all that, man.
Now, tell me about work? I mean, obviously, I would imagine it's impossible for people not to notice the work. Is that what's going on with work? If you tell them what you're doing, are they like, any of them think you're crazy, or do some of them try to do it, or what's going on with people you work with?
So, when you bring in your food to eat, at a lunch break at work, a lot of people see you and they're like, man, you always eat the same stuff, but I'm getting healthier. A lot of these guys saw my transition at my work, man. I've worked at this company for 14 years. So they've seen me at my heaviest in my yo-yo dieting, to where I've lost some and regained some, to where I've sustained something that better than I ever have in my whole life, to where my work performance even got better, to where, obviously I'm running around a lot more now, to where I'm not feeling sluggish. I work at a giant warehouse, almost like a Home Depot. When you're running back and forth up and down these aisles, and I'm receiving trucks, I'm hand unloading trucks all day, you got to be able to be physically active to move. Obviously I got a lot more energy, man, to wake up. I wake up around 3:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday. I go unload trucks and then go to training right after. So I have that much energy to knock out a whole 8-hour day and still go into super training gym where I know you've been. It's like a different world in there, to be able to get through a workout like that.
Yeah, and I just want to, back up because I know Chris and Mark, reasonably well, and both of those guys are honest, sincere, genuine people, and they have a heart of gold, and they really, really help people. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Chris responded, and having been around those guys, I know, what they're about, and they are,
Yes.
for somebody that doubts them, they're very genuine, giving people, and it's great to see that you got hooked up with them because like I said, sometimes you need that mentor or that help, and that's kind of community is so important here. What do you have planned in the future now with regard to are you got some more powerlifting meets coming up? What's going on with that stuff?
So right now I'm planning on doing the powerlift meet in October if everything still goes on. With everything going on with the world, everything's so iffy. So I don't know if the meet will actually take place, but this is my goal right now, is to go into October at a powerlift meet. After getting the first taste of a powerlift meet, what it's like, I don't think I could ever go back from that. Now all I want to do is train for the next meet, and man, those guys have had such a big impact in my life, man. They've taken me in. For somebody being a stranger like myself, they didn't care what my background was. They took me in and treated me like a part of their family, like they've known me their whole life. Man, I cannot thank those guys enough for what they have done and continue to do for me, man. They're amazing people.
Yeah, for someone, and I did my years of powerlifting, and I'm not doing that much. That I still lift, but I'm not focusing on that anymore. But I did like almost 2.5 decades of that stuff.
Sure.
Super Training Gym obviously has had some of almost every world-class powerlifting athlete, strength athlete, world's strongest man athlete has spent some time at Super Training Gym.
Absolutely.
It's literally a mecca, and it's a really blessing for those who want to do strength sports to go there. So that's really cool that you have access to that. What kind of numbers? Do you have any numbers in the back of your head of what you want to hit for this powerlifting meet?
I did, man. So what I wanted to deadlift has been my strongest so far, and what I wanted to hit for this meet, every time I go into deadlift, I end up destroying a higher number lately. So as of now, I really want to focus on getting to the road to 500, because I know not a lot of people, it's physically hard to get to that number, man. And right now, that's what I want to focus on within the next couple of years. How do I get myself to even get that bar up for one rep of 500?
Yeah, I remember a time when it's kind of funny. I remember when I was in my residency, my surgical residency, there was a period of time, and my goal, I lifted 500 pounds every single day, every morning, one rep. I'd walk in, I'd pull 500 just to kind of do that. And I was having fun with that. I did that for about, 2 or 3 months. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning before I had to go to work. I go in, deadlift 500 pounds, start the day, and then I go back to work. But this is reading some of the work of Louis Simmons and looking at these finished loggers that, just every day they make their body do this stuff, and then it becomes easy. What happened for me is I got really good at deadlifting 500 pounds. It didn't really translate into 700 pounds, and that came at a different time. When I started doing 700 and almost got to 800. But that's like I said, from where you started, 2 years ago to where you are now is just a huge, huge, huge accomplishment. I'm always impressed by people that do that, because a lot of people don't know what it's like to be 400 plus pounds. Fortunately, but the people that do, many of them, in fact, most of them, they end up dying early, or they never get out of that. Like I said, good for you to do that. Have you had a lot of people reach out to you with similar situations? Are you inspired?
Absolutely.
A lot, because everybody kind of relates to people they're similar to. So I see, different people from different backgrounds that reach out to me. But what's been have you got any success stories of other people that you can share that you've seen?
I have quite a bit of people that reach out to me daily, and my whole thing is, it doesn't matter how many followers I have, man. I respond back to every comment that gets left on my page or privately in the DM. There's so many people that tell me their story, and man, it hits home for me like I just am reliving it at the moment, because I know the struggles they went through. I know the battles they've gone up and down with, you know. Daily, man, I'm reaching back out to somebody just to say, hey, you got this, man. You know, you're already this far in. Just continue on it. You know, I tend not to forget about people, man, because, you know, in the beginning, that was the hardest for me, is, you know, seeing the finish line. But then in all reality, there's no actual finish line, because when you get to wherever you want to get, you got a new goal coming up. There's no way you're going to stay, you know, at that level to where you wanted to just reach. There's something new that you're going to adventure upon, you know. There is no actual finish line in any of this, you know, but everybody that reaches out to me, man, I tell them, this is your goal weight, get to that finish line. But I know when they get to that finish line, they're going to see another finish line in the future that they want to work towards.
Yeah, and I think, you know, some people like to say, and I do, like, complacency is a killer. You know, you get satisfied where you are, and that's always a recipe for, you know, things getting worse. Exactly. Tell me about, because you mentioned this, because, you know, going from 400 pounds to 186 pounds, that didn't happen in a week. Talk to me about some of the struggles you might have had along the way, so people that can realize, were there times when you struggled? Was there ever like, this is tough, this is hard, this isn't going well? Tell me about a little bit about that.
You know, in the beginning, when you're waking up every day and you're still looking in the mirror and you're like, man, I'm doing everything I can. Why isn't this weight disappearing? You know, there's some days where you get on the scale and you're like, dude, how did I gain 5 pounds and I'm not eating anything different? You know, it got to a point where I threw away my scale. The scale was the biggest battle for me. You know, I'm looking in the mirror, my clothes are fitting better, but in all reality, I'm getting on the scale and now I've gained 5 pounds out of like nowhere within a week. A lot of it could be like water weight and stuff like that. But, you know, when you're at that weight, you don't think about water weight. You're like, dude, am I doing something wrong now? How did I gain this 5 pounds? And sometimes that 5 pounds will stick around for about three weeks, like, until it finally disappears. And you're like, okay, well, am I back on track now? What did I do different? So the scale had to go away for me, where I just didn't want to weigh myself anymore. I literally threw it out, and, you know, I kept looking in the mirror, and I just said, okay, am I transitioning? Do I look like I lost more weight? My shirts are fitting me better. I'm going to a different size. That was my biggest thing. One of my biggest battles, man, when you know, being so heavy, I was only able to shop at one place. And you being that heavy, you're only shopping at the big stores, to where there's a couple shirt options. You know, you're either getting a red one or a blue one. That's it. You know, it just looks like you don't change your clothes that week. You know, you're really limited to a few options. Man, my biggest thing was, I just wanted to go into like a Target, man. And, you know, if I needed a shirt, I could just grab anyone off the shelf. My biggest win was this, man, is we were season pass holders for Disneyland. I always used to take my daughter every year. And one night I was very cold at the park, and I went with my daughter, and I was able to purchase a Jack the Skeleton sweater in a large size. And man, it felt so good to just be able to say, look, I'm in the middle of Disneyland. I can't leave to go to one of these big people stores. I was able to get a sweater and just put it on, man. I know that's little to a lot of people, but man, I felt like I won the world over that. I was able to fit into a sweater, you know, just being cold that night.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. Some things other people take for granted. What was your size? I mean, you were like 4X, 5X, and now you're at large. What was the difference?
I was pushing out of a 5X, man. I was almost into a 6X. You know, there's a picture where I always post where I'm wearing a tie-dye shirt, and that's my daughter's birthday. You know, a week before I started this transition, I kid you not, man, that shirt I still have, it's a 5X. We had to stretch that shirt out, you know, for it to actually fit me and look kind of loose on me. It took a little bit, man, but you know, it looks like I'm wearing this giant shirt, which it is. It's a 5X, but I had to stretch it out to get it to fit me even better, so it doesn't look like it's hugging me in that picture. I still have that shirt too, man, just because that was the very first transition photo that I posted, you know, like a year apart.
Yeah, yeah, you keep that as a souvenir, you know, to kind
Yeah.
of remind you where you come from, because that, or where you came from, because that is really tremendous. What you know, you said you like to, what kind of foods do you make now? You said you kind of like to experiment with cooking.
Yeah.
Do you do kind of any kind of crazy carnivore stuff, or is it just kind of straight up meat and water type of thing?
No, I play around with a lot of protein and stuff like that. You know, Mark Bell sells a Slingshot protein. You know, what I want to do eventually, man, is turn my kids away from all the packaged stuff that comes from the store. You know, I get it. Kids are going to be kids, and they still want to enjoy ice cream and stuff like that. So what I do is I buy the Slingshot protein that he sells. It's a great flavor, both of them. He has a chocolate and vanilla, and I make my kids ice cream out of that. A lot of times I'll make them protein waffles out of that. You know, there's a couple of beef gelatin powders that, you know, you buy from the store. I end up making Sour Patches out of them. You know, just very simple stuff, man. I play around with, and just to open their eyes to something different, you know. And if they gravitate towards it, great, you know. At least I know what's in this stuff. You know, no sugars, nothing like that. It's just something that's good for them. You know, it's basically having an extra serving of protein for them rather than having the carb or sugar. But yeah, man, the most challenging thing is, how do I get my kids on board to this? You know, where I cut out everything. But I love to create stuff like that for my kids to just kind of look at it and say, yeah, it tastes great. You know, I made a video clip of my daughter actually tasting the vanilla ice cream. And she was like, it tastes like cake batter. And I was like, exactly, you know. And she doesn't know there's no sugar in that or nothing like that. She just knows I made her ice cream.
Yeah.
That's one of my things I like to play with. You know, how do I make something that's normally bought at the store to where it's just healthy? Yeah. No, thank you for having me. This was awesome. This was great. Man, I was so excited to do this, and this is like the best community that I've found, you know, because, you know, a lot of times when you're telling people you're dieting, nobody really understands, you know, the stuff you're eating. Everybody thinks you're just, you know, going crazy eating just red meat. But this community has been nothing but positive for me, to where, you know, I see everybody else's transition photos and I'm like, man, these people understand what I went through, you know?
100%, and your inspiration is unreal. I mean, I'm
Oh,
so
thank
excited
you.
to share this with my clients, my own family members. I mean,
Sure.
thank you so much. It's amazing.
Oh, no, thank you.
Feel free to take a minute to let everybody know where to find you.
Yes. So I'm only on Instagram. My handle is _carnivore_chef. And like I said during the chat with Sean, anytime somebody leaves a comment on my page or messages me, I get back to everybody. So if anybody has any tips or, you know, anything they want to ask, feel free to message me. I love, you know, finding other people that are on the same track as me, you know, basically the same path. We're basically going together to find the same end result, you know, so they totally understand where I'm trying to do, and I totally understand what they're trying to do. So feel free to message me. I love chatting with people about, you know, what can get me better or how I can help them stay on track on this diet.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And also the way that you carry through with how Chris responded to you and you respond to I mean, that's beautiful. So
Thank you.
thank you again. Thank you. Have a great day.
You as well.
Feel
All right.
fab. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.